That video intro always gets me a little bit pumped for the live shows, so I always like to play them just to kind of get people into the room. Happy Friday to you all. It is an incredibly hot Castaic, California, where I am. And for those of you either in the Southern California area or anywhere where you get news from Southern California, we are having a pretty big wildfire. It is just, at this point, it's probably about 5 to 10 minutes from me. They've gotten a better handle on it, but if you've seen my posts on social media, it has been an absolute nightmare the last couple of days. So it's not only scorching because it's like 110. Yesterday it hit 117 while I was driving. But on top of that, we are literally burning in this city. So, like I said, I hope that they've gotten a handle on it. We're not seeing that much smoke here anymore, despite how close it is. We think it's moving north of us, but it's been nuts. So here I am, Friday night. Dogs are barking all around. Kids are in and out of the pool. I have no idea what's going to happen on this behind the scenes, but here's the intent. For those of you who don't know what these videos are, it's literally an informal kind of hangout. You guys are used to me a little bit more formal, a little bit more structured, a little bit more scripted, much more edited videos. These, who knows what happens. One time, my wife came blowing through the back door because she thought I was dead. I wasn't responding to her text messages. She knew I was home. She got home, flew open the door, and one of the live streams, it was funny. She was so angry at me after that one because she did that. But regardless, we never know what's going to happen. So the behind the scenes is I am going to record a segment I've been meaning to record for quite some time, and actually some new documents were published this week where it just kind of made sense to finally sit down and record this video. And I thought, hey, let's just turn the camera on. Let's do it live. It's been kind of an exciting couple of weeks for those who have been involved in the UFO conversation, especially on social media like hashtag UFO Twitter. It's a lot of drama, a lot of craziness. But a lot of important questions that come along with it. I hate the drama. I really do, despite what some of my haters say. But I think that there's a lot of unanswered questions that, hey, you know what? I'd love to see some answers too. So it's like some voices are very loud when they shouldn't be and address things that really are pointless, and then are very quiet on the points that they should address and just kind of let the house burn, so to speak. But hey, regardless, whatever works for them. So I see that some of you have joined. Thank you so much. 137 by the live stream count. I'm going to do my best to watch the chat while I go. I'm going to record this segment first, and then I'll just kind of, hang out with you guys for a little bit. Probably have, I don't know, till about 5:30 Pacific time before Daddy Duty's going to kind of kick in here and dinner and all that good stuff. But I'm kind of sneaking away to finish up my workday doing this. My other job, my one away from the Black Vaults, kept me kind of busy, so it's been a little bit quiet for me, so I apologize. But hopefully here we'll get caught up on some segments, questions, just hang out with you guys. So hey, I saw that. Ryan, thank you so much. And speaking of our buddy Ryan, host of Somewhere in the Skies podcast, real popular show. Ryan, I know either recently left or Ryan, forgive me, I've been on and off social media with the fire situation. I believe you've already left America and you've gone overseas. Hope you had a great trip. If you don't know Ryan, definitely check out his podcast and YouTube channel. Very cool guy. So thanks for being here, Ryan. So let me go ahead and just kind of do this segment, and then I'll get to some questions. So again, this is that behind the scenes. You're going to see me kind of pause for a second, and then I do the segment, and then I end it. But when I end it, just know I'm not ending this stream. I just look for a cut point. That's what is dropped later on, probably through the weekend. See how quick I can cut that one together, but that's the more structured piece that you see. But you can kind of see what we deal with. And this particular segment is about the security classification guide that I've talked a lot about on this channel and elsewhere. And some people are wondering, why I feel that the UFO secrecy is deepening, because that's not a popular belief right now. And I'll get into that. Ryan, you are in Scotland now. Yeah, and you're very welcome. So there you go. Fans of Ryan, he is now overseas. America misses you, Ryan. Hopefully you'll come back. And Luis Jimenez. Luis, I hear you've done some shows in the last couple of weeks. Good to see you here. The Unidentified Celebrity Review. It's good to see that title there. Luis Jimenez. And before we get started, Spooky, thank you so much. Obviously, I'm guessing it's at a British pound, 2 decades, and I'm still following. Thanks, Spooky, for that. 26 years. Let me see, it's September. Yeah, pretty much to the day. 26 years ago, I started the Black Vault. Craziness. All right, here we go. I'm going to try and if I see a super chat. Again, I don't just focus on questions that are super chats, so please don't take that the wrong way. They're just easier for me to see on my monitor here. So as I'm doing the live stream, they stick out. If it pertains to the video, I'll take it. If not, I'll try and flag it, take it after. We'll scroll through. Don't worry, I'll take other questions too. You don't need to donate to the channel. But if you decide to do it, just know 100% of it goes right back into the channel. Everything you see, the graphics, the animation, especially the music, it's all officially licensed. So I do it very much by the book, support those independent artists of the music that I use, but use libraries that, again, are cleared to use. That's what your donations go to, including the research, the documents, and the web hosting to keep it all alive. So with that quick note, bear with me here. Don't leave when I say goodbye. That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and making this your podcast or your live stream of choice. I'm your host, John Greenwald Jr., and today I'm doing a little bit of a breakdown of a document that I've talked quite a bit about, or at least mentioned on this channel and also in podcasts, that has really not been put into detail in the way that I like, because some people will hear me talk about it and they will hear me talk about the secrecy deepening behind UAP and go, what is John talking about? We hear about UAP all the time. It's in legislation. It's being bantered about in congressional hallways. This is it. We're on a road to disclosure. Well, au contraire, because there is stuff going on now behind the scenes. And now this document coming out, kind of showing the world that secrecy is clamping down on this topic. Now, I first got this document, again, it's called a Security Classification Guide, or in brief, a SCG, late last year in 2021. It didn't make a whole lot of headlines because, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's just not sexy. I use that phrase a lot because it's the truth. You need some flashy, some kind of mind-blowing information or implication behind documents to get that national attention. This didn't really get that, nor did I expect it to. But to be honest with you, it's probably one of the, again, in my opinion, one of the most important documents that I've gotten in regards to UAP. Now, why is that? And let me go ahead and tell you guys, get my laser pointer here so I can point to some stuff. This is the cover page, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Security Classification Guide ID 04-030 from the Naval Intelligence Activity, or NIA. Now, why do I think that this is the most important document? Well, just to give a very brief background, I was going to do a little bit more history on the SCGs, but I decided not to. I welcome you guys all to look it up. It's not exclusive to UAP, but the in short, nutshell version is that every topic, program, or type of information has a guide on how it's classified. Some is very generic, meaning there's not a specific guide for every little thing that may be classified, but rather you'll find them for more specific programs or, in this case, topics. And what essentially they do is they break down how and why to classify it, and it defines the secrecy behind, again, that program or the topic. So in this case here, UAP. So this SCG defines the security classification behind UAP and outlines that any information that's created by UAP breaks down essentially what is classified and what's not. Another way to kind of summarize that is when you create a memo, a report, you don't just go, well, it's top secret. You know, there's a reason that things are top secret. There's a reason that things are secret or confidential or unclassified for official use only. So there are manuals and stipulations for all of that that breaks down why things are classified. So let's get into this document here, because I knew back in, I think early 2020, they were working on this. And through FOIA, found banter by Joseph Gradisher within the Navy emails. That was kind of the first thing that confirmed it in writing. Just through research and talking prior to that, I already had a request in for it because I knew that this thing was either being worked on or likely on the books already. So my request was already there, but then I got supporting evidence through another FOIA release that the one of the spokespeople talking about UAP, when they still were within the U.S. Navy, talked about a security classification guide, again, defining the secrecy for UAP. So I knew it was a matter of time before I could at least get, hopefully, some of this released to the general public. When I finally got it late last year, it was heavily redacted. We'll go over every page. It's not too lengthy, but I at least want to break it down for you guys to help prove my point of when I reference this deepening secrecy, this is why. This particular page, we can't read the majority of the names except the approval, Mr. Scott Bray. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar to you, he was one of the ones that testified before Congress, and essentially he approved all the secrecy. So when they deny me or deny you or deny a journalist asking at a press podium or a press conference, and they say no, Scott Bray is the one who approved all of this secrecy. So to have him testify at the hearing, I had already known his name by this, and I thought, okay, well, we're probably not going to learn too much. To my surprise, we actually learned more than what I thought, but regardless, it was still not as much as obviously we all wanted. But he's the man that approved it. The reviewer from the Special Security Offices, or SSO, U.S. Navy, we don't know who that is, but there was a review process there. And then the preparation. Office of Naval Intelligence, or ONI, this was the location of the UAP task force at the time. I will bet money that that is Jay Stratton. It kind of makes sense. Jay Stratton was the one that originally wrote the statements that I got way back, I believe in 2019 it was, September 11th is when I published that story that truly did go viral. It was picked up by hundreds of outlets throughout the world when they finally went on the record and said those 3 videos they labeled as UAP or designated them as UAP. The reason why that story was so big was that they had never acknowledged the videos' authenticity, even though, again, most everybody assumed them to be true. They never wanted to talk about them or address them or admit that they were officially released. So with those facts, they never talked about what was in the videos. So we know Luis Elizondo described them on paper in his official filing as drones, balloons, and UAS. But what was odd was they labeled them as UAP. I was floored by that. I didn't expect it. And again, that story went viral. When I did subsequent FOIA requests to that story, I had discovered that although Joseph Gradisher, again, that spokesperson for Navy, gave me that statement, it was Jay Stratton who had created that statement. And in fact, the statement was much longer. Gradisher cut it down. I was able to get the full statement, published it months later. It was at that moment, Jay Stratton was a mystery to everyone. Despite a select few insiders, but Jay Stratton was a mystery to the general public. I had no idea who he was until that moment. That's when he went on my radar, and I have followed him ever since. Since then, it came out that he was involved in the UAP effort, going back to the OSAP days, likely is Axelrod and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, but I've never officially confirmed that. But again, there was a lot of rumors because people started talking about this guy. But he's been on my radar for years for that reason, because if you're crafting the statement about UAP, you are someone. It was then assumed he was the director of the UAPTF, but never confirmed. Never confirmed through official statements that I'm aware of. I've never seen one, but ironically, got it confirmed through a NASA FOIA release. Mistake or not, I'm not sure, but they revealed Jay Stratton's name and referred to him as the director of the UAP task force. So that solidified it. Again, some of these things we kind of logically conclude, but then when we get the hardcore evidence, then you can use that in future cases and so on. So that's the breakdown of the signature page. Here's the next page, section 1, identifying data. This is just the identifying data to the SCG itself, the subject, unidentified aerial phenomenon, the unit of primary responsibility, that's the PR, the Office of Naval Intelligence, the certifying authority, CA, Mr. Scott Bray, Director of Naval Intelligence Agency, top secret original classification authority, effective 17 June 2019. So we know that even before it was officially approved, there was stuff in 2019 that was likely still defining that secrecy for UAP. This was, I believe, the official date of publication, which was April 16th, 2020. And then I believe the RD stands for rescind date. So it essentially stays on the books until April 16th, 2025, unless it is extended. The RD, prior to this, I couldn't quite find a document to authenticate that acronym, but I'm pretty sure it's rescind date. And they're going to use it until then, again, or if something is published. Section 2, General Instructions, the purpose. This classification guide is issued for the purpose of identifying specific topics of information associated with the Office of Naval Intelligence Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force that meet the standards and criteria for classification and protection in accordance with Executive Order 13526, Classified National Security Information, as amended, and its implementing directives. Authority. This guide is issued under authority of SecNav M 5510.36 and Executive Order 13526. DoD Manual 5200.01, Volumes 1 through 4. This guide constitutes authority and may be cited as the basic classification, regrading, or declassification of information and material involved in UAP collection and analysis. Changes in classification required by application of this guide shall be made immediately. Information identified in this guide for protection as classified information is classified by the Director, Naval Intelligence Activity, a top secret original classification authority. Classification challenges. If at any time security classification guidance contained herein is challenged or temporary markers of a higher classification are made, the items of information involved shall continue to be protected at the level prescribed by this guide until a formal decision by an appropriate authority is made. Classification challenges should be addressed to the PR, or Primary Responsibility Office. Generally, you see that as OPR, noted in Section 1 above. Reproduction, extraction, and dissemination. This guide may be reproduced and disseminated as needed. However, to ensure receipt of updates, revisions, and classification changes, whenever this guide is disseminated beyond an initial address, notify the PR. Public release. The fact that this guide shows certain details of information to be unclassified, including controlled unclassified information, does not allow automatic public release of this information. DoD or Navy information requested by the media or members of the public or proposed for release to the public by DoD civilians or military personnel or their contractors shall be processed in accordance with DoD Manual 5200.01, SecNav M-5510.36, DoD Directives 5230.09, DoD Instruction 5230.29, DoD 5400.7-R, and Secretary of the Navy Instruction 5720.42G as applicable. I'm reading that obviously for the audio version and those taking notes. Proposed public disclosures of unclassified information regarding UAP shall be processed through the cognizant NIA or Naval Intelligence Agency Freedom of Information Act officer. Let me stop right there. What's really interesting about this, and this is just a little bit of speculation, but DoD or Navy information requested by the media or members of the public or proposed for release to the public by DoD civilians or military personnel or their contractors shall be processed in accordance with. What's interesting is they have to stipulate all that because you go back to the Gimbal, the FLIR, and the Go Fast videos. At that time, there was no security classification guide for UAP information. So it was proposed to be released through what's called a DD Form 1910 filed by Luis Elizondo. These videos, which the Navy labeled as UAP, which this document defines would or should be classified secret or above, if it goes in, this guide would apply. But in 2017, when Luis Elizondo filed that, there was no security classification guide. So they were either mislabeled, not properly labeled, you fill in the blank, but regardless, they were not ever talked or labeled UAP, but rather, again, balloon, UAS, drones, and so on. So there was no mention of it. This is stipulating that anything that falls under this category that's being proposed for release, like a DD Form 1910, this has to apply, which you will learn in a few minutes, puts it at a security classification of secret or above, which would be top secret. So this defined all that. So is that line in there to ensure that if anybody else came along and filed a DD Form 1910 and said, hey, this balloon video should be declassified, it's not going to slip through the cracks. So very interesting line there that I felt was there for a reason, but let me stress, that's just speculation. All right, number 6, foreign disclosure. And don't worry, there's not a whole lot of reading here, just simply because a lot of it's redacted, which you'll learn in a minute. Foreign disclosure. Any disclosure to foreign officials of information classified by this guide shall be in accordance with the procedures set forth in Secretary of the Navy Instruction 5510.34a and Department of the Navy Foreign Disclosure Manual of September 2007. If a country with which the DoD has entered into a reciprocal procurement memorandum of understanding or offset arrangement expresses an interest in this effort, a foreign disclosure review must be conducted prior to issuance of a solicitation. 7. Definitions: unidentified aerial phenomena. Any aerial phenomenon that cannot be immediately identified, period. That's their identification and definition of what a UAP is. This here's the essentially what they call the authority block. This is put at the bottom of the pages that are classified and classified with this as the authority. So essentially you will see references to the SCG of whatever the topic or program name at hand that defines that classification. In this case, it's telling anybody using the manual, this is how you identify a classified document, and the authority being this guide. Classified by Mr. Scott Bray, Director, Naval Intelligence Activity, Reason 1.4c, declassify on, and then I'll show you some real examples of this, but essentially the date that it's declassified on. Identification: where information pertaining to UAP has been obtained or developed through the use of classified sources or methods. The proper classification of a resultant item of information or material will be the highest classification set forth in either this classification guide or the classification guide or guides applicable to the sources or methods used to obtain UAP information or material. Accordingly, information about UAP designated herein as secret/REL/FVEY may well be top secret /SCR special compartmentalized information /no foreign or no foreign intelligence due to the sources or methods through which the UAP information was collected. In those cases where the sources or methods used to acquire the UAP information or material would lead to a higher classification level, the applicable SCG pertaining to those sources or methods should be cited as the classification authority, not this guide. In other words, in plain English, because I know that's a mouthful, UAP information comes in at the secret level. Any sources, methods, or let's say like an instrumentation or something like that that gathered that information, you're not going to put top secret acquired information in a secret document. So essentially you're going to have a top secret classification on it. And then in, again, more legal jargon and their military speak, instead of referencing the UAP security classification guide, you will rather reference that other authority that authorized that top secret level. You'll see here, now we're starting to get into quite a bit of blacked out information. Number 3, so that whole number 2 is redacted. We don't know what that is. Number 3, goal and mission. The mission of this task force is to detect, analyze, and consolidate and exploit advanced non-traditional aerospace vehicles posing an operational threat to U.S. national security and avoid strategic surprise. End item. So this essentially now defines the level of secrecy as it pertains to UAP at different levels. And it starts with the stuff that is unclassified. And this is going to get a little small for me, so I may have to lean in here, but I forgot to zoom in on the next slide. But regardless, this again defines what level of secrecy certain things are, starting with unclassified, which is stuff that they can give out. And you'll see it tie in to Pentagon spokespeople statements and stuff like that. So things that they're okay for allowing you and I to know, that's unclassified. And so they define that. And so anybody using this guide can start blind and go, oh, okay, number one, the term unidentified aerial phenomena is unclassified. So they know that they can say UAP out in the open. Sounds silly, but all of those things have to be defined. Other examples of showing why that's not silly is a classified code word. So in a classification guide with a code word, it'll show you if you say this code word, it's classified secret or top secret. The fact that Navy pilots and other Department of the Navy personnel have witnessed and the certain Department of Navy technical systems have detected at unspecified times and places UAPs, that fact is unclassified. Let me see if I can zoom in. Hey, it worked. Awesome. All right. Now I can read. This is, let me see if I can. I've never done this feature before. Nope, we can't. Knuckles. All right. No laser pointer, but I'm at 1C. The fact that the frequency of UAP sightings has increased in recent years without any further information regarding when, where, or how often sightings have been reported. That's obviously unclassified. 1D, the fact that Navy has an ongoing effort to gain knowledge and insight into the nature and origins of UAPs, as well as their operations, capabilities, performance, and or signatures. Unclassified. The fact that naval intelligence in general, and the Office of Naval Intelligence in particular, has created a task force to gain knowledge and insight into the nature and origins of UAPs, as well as their operations, capabilities, performance, and or signatures. Unclassified. Goal, mission, and purpose. The fact that the task force's mission is to detect, analyze, catalog, consolidate, and exploit non-traditional aerospace vehicles, UAP, posing an operational threat to U.S. national security and avoid strategic surprise. Obviously unclassified. So if you follow Pentagon statements, a lot of those facts, even some of the exact wording, was in that. So that's all things that they are comfortable talking about in the open. This here is where it gets really interesting because now we have no idea what they're talking about. We have no idea what points about UAP they will not let out in the open. And you can see here, I love this feature. I had no idea that it's available. Zooming in here, this header I was able to get out. Intelligence collection, exploitation, analysis, and products. Now, why is this interesting and fascinating to me? It's generally the word exploitation. What are they exploiting? And that's a big question mark. I mean, we only have speculation at this point. Everybody talks about crash retrievals and stuff that they have in their possession, and that's all well and good. And it probably sounds a lot sexier than it probably is. But this here, I think, is starting to show between exploitation and analysis that there are things revolving around those words, exploiting and analyzing, that shows that when it comes to UAP, they have something. Whether it's a piece of a foreign drone, whether it's a piece of a computer chip that they stole from some Chinese factory or Russian factory, whatever. Again, it's pure speculation. But to me, this is telling me that there are points underneath this blacked out material that tie into exploiting and analyzing whatever it is about UAP, and it's all classified. Now, of course, you can analyze a video, and that's fine. I mean, sure, that there may be some lines in here. But can you exploit a video? And I would say probably not. Can you exploit the technology? Yes. That's where I lean towards. Now, again, I'm stressing the speculation part because we have no idea. But regardless, this header is fascinating to me. Also, I always like to point this out. See the difference in redactions here? I would bet that this is a header and this is number 4, just looking at the page ahead. And whoever reviewed it first, which gave these redactions with the red citation, which you'll see the majority of, you look at this one, it was added after. I bet you this was a second layer of review, The first person thought it was okay to release this header. Second person said no way. They redacted it for the same national security reason, and they don't tell us. So I always think those are fun because there are certain people that would have let that slide, other people not so much. So in the end, we get a whole lot of redaction there. This also supports, this is header number 3. This likely was number 4 because the next page is number 5. I zoomed it in here, 5 relationships, all redacted. As noted, and this is the footnote to that section, so something in here references this. As noted in section 1, paragraph B, where information pertaining to UAP has been obtained or developed through the use of classified sources or methods, the proper classification of a resultant item of information or material will be the highest classification, what is stated in this classification guide, or the classification guide or guides applicable to the sources or methods used to obtain the UAP information or material. Accordingly, the classification level noted below may be incorrect if the source or method used to collect the information dictates a higher level of classification. Still pretty much the same language we already went over, but they footnote it. I wanted it to make sure that I go over it. This here, I think that this was meant to be one of the first pages. I think this is more just the cover page for the classification guide, identifying marks, stuff like that. I won't go over every line, but wanted to show it to you as part of the FOIA release. It was at the end of the packet and so on. Now, why does this matter, right? I know some of that's dry and some of you haven't really seen a lot of the comments and stuff, but I bet some of them are, you know, like, oh God, this is boring. It actually is. But here's the bottom line over everything that I just went through. And that is when you look at all the secrecy, it essentially mandates that other than those unclassified points that I went over that you can read, everything about UAP is automatically put at a secret level. Everything beyond those basic points. Everything. It's defined here. All of those other points, all those other aspects, all of those other exploitation realities, all that other analysis, data points and stuff like that, all classified. Secret, if not above. So this is the reason, this is the hindrance from us knowing what's real. And the guy that's testifying to Congress is the one that approved all this. He's the one that said, yep, no, this is great, guys. I fully support this level of secrecy. And you can see here, there's a lot. Couple points we can read, all basic, we've known them for years. Everything else, 100% classified. They won't tell you. So that conversation that has changed, which is great in the last few years, and I'm very encouraged that there's congressional legislation and stuff like that, all of that is fine. But the problem is at the end of the day is that you get very little. Why? Because the guy that's testifying is the guy that approved the secrecy. And that secrecy that he approved essentially classifies almost everything. And so even though we hear the words UAP and they're talking about it within the halls of Congress and there's some legislation going out there, the bottom line is senators and congressmen will not disobey their security oath. And even though they love to tell you and I that there's this push for transparency and we want to tell you what happened at that UAP hearing when it got interesting in certain questions and certain angles that came up. We can talk about that more in a closed session. That's what we're going to be faced with, and how many that were in that hearing pushed back. I didn't see any. None of them said, no. You know what? The public deserves to know. No, of course not, because they are going to appreciate what needs to be kept secret. So when we get to a level that has anything to do with any of that I just went over, it's classified, and we likely will not see pushback from it. So will we get some trickle-down information? Sure, absolutely. And it'll satisfy congressional mandates, and we'll get another June 2021 report that was 9 pages long and told us very little. There was some nuggets in there, but again, very little. Some statistics, some kind of cool stuff. New, arguably, not really. It was just kind of putting some fancier language and a little bit more concrete affirmation on what we already knew. Other than that, not so much. Why? This. And that was the issue with all of that. So let me show you some real-time examples of what now this does. I'm going to start with someone else's FOIA request. I highlighted this on theblackvault.com, but I'm starting with Alex Garcia's request. Great researcher who discovered that within the Naval Intelligence Activity. There was a top secret information memo that essentially was about unidentified aerial phenomenon, but it was essentially entirely blacked out. And you'll notice here at the bottom, that classified authority block, most people just blow right past it because it just looks like, some additional jargon nobody really cares about. So they look at all the information and it's all blacked out. These are the first 2 pages. But when you zoom in, this is what authorized all of that classification. The UAP Security Classification Guide, what we just went over. That information that was all blacked out is not scheduled to be declassified until 2045. Again, thanks to that guide. Now, will it come out prior to that? I won't get off on too much of a tangent here. Yes, there's absolutely possibilities. There are mandatory declassification reviews. So if you get somebody who takes your case that you put up and agrees that it should be declassified, or something happens where what is classified here in 2022 is not classified in 2025, that they don't have to wait until 2045 to declassify it. They'll do it ahead of time. But right now it's mandated to stay classified until 2045, thanks to this manual here. This is what happened this week that I thought, hey, let's just go ahead and do this video. And there were a bunch of, it's like 70 plus pages of what these range fouler reports are. And we've seen some of these range fouler reports. If you don't know what a range fouler is, it's essentially something that encroaches on a training exercise, is kind of the very quick nutshell version. We saw references to the range foulers in the June 2021 UAP report. And look, I mean, I'll be honest, I had no idea what that was. It was an interesting term. But once you start digging in, it really does sound like, let's say they're doing a exercise of some kind, a large balloon goes into their training exercise. It could potentially interfere with their exercise. Some Joe Schmo on the outside of the military facility flies a commercial drone in there, potentially a danger, potentially a surveillance issue. Those are considered range foulers, but also within are some additional encounters. So I'm not trying to dismiss the importance of these, but the problem is, look at all that redaction. And I was going to do a video when these came out, breaking them down, but it's so hard to read these documents anyway, where you go, and then redacted, and then it flew redacted, and made a right redacted. It's ridiculous. And you can see here how absolutely god-awful it really is as I kind of zoom in there, zoom around, and you guessed it. See here at the bottom? It's all authorized by the UAP Security Classification Guide. Again, the roadblock. That small document that I just went through is the roadblock to all of this. So now we have all of these real-world examples of why I'm saying secrecy is deepening. Prior to 2019, 2018, they denied UFO interest, but I was able to show, in my opinion, undeniable proof of that. I'm working on what will be a rather large, live, free hangout / presentation to all of you on this channel. So stay tuned for that. What I will do is go over that information, kind of dealing with primarily the era between the close of Project Blue Book and the revolution about ATIP. And in my opinion, there's ample evidence that there was a cover-up, that they were seeing UFOs, that they were reporting UFOs around the globe, that they were collecting intelligence. So despite what they were saying, there's all this information that proves otherwise. But there was no mandate for automatic classification. So you'll actually see, like, for example, the 1976 Iran incident, where you have a amazing encounter that some argue may be explainable, but let's face it, we don't have an adequate one yet, where you have multiple UFOs being seen. It's infamously known as the 1976 Iran incident. The original DIA report, the intelligence report, was unclassified. Now, let me use that as a real-world example today. Despite there being an explanation or not, doesn't matter. If there is a UAP security classification guide in 1976 that I just showed you, that report would have automatically been done as secret, if not top secret, for whatever other reason might apply. But instead, that document, along with Quite a few others remained unclassified because there was not that mandate for it to become classified. Other records were classified that dealt with UAP or UFOs, but that was mandated by other classification reasons. Let's say a source and method that was defined somewhere else. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds there, but my whole point is that there are reports unclassified at the unclassified level that have come out from these intelligence agencies that because there was no classification guide that mandated the automatic classification of it, people like me could come along and get it. It makes it a little bit easier. The classification guide, is making it harder. So I wanted to go over that with you guys, break down some real world examples, and again, support why I say that security, I feel, is deepening. This talk about we're in the midst of disclosure, look, I think it's great that some people think that, but the evidence doesn't support it. Disclosure of what? We haven't heard anything yet. And just because Congress is, again, muttering the phrases and acronyms of UAP and unidentified aerial phenomena and so on and so forth, all of that is great. The problem is the evidence doesn't support that disclosure talk. And in fact, that secrecy is deepening. And in fact, the same voices that are telling you we want transparency and we're going to require reports are getting very minimal reports. But then on top of that, when being told we can talk more about that in a classified setting, they go, oh, yeah, okay, not a problem. We can talk. Why? Because it doesn't matter if they push back or not. They're going to hear it anyway. Then their security oaths and clearances take over, and then they don't come out and tell you or I. They just say they're working on it, or there's something strange, or we need to fund this, but we don't get the answers that we're looking for. So that's my justification for saying that the secrecy is deepening. So that said, I appreciate all of you listening or watching. If you're watching on YouTube, it's a huge help. Please give me a thumbs up on the video. That really does help with the algorithms. And on top of that, if you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. It's a huge help to me. If you're listening to the audio podcast version, thank you so much for doing so. If you're not aware that I have those, it's under the Black Vault Radio on Spotify, iTunes, whatever your favorite radio podcast aggregator of choice is, or you can stream directly from the blackvault.com, download the MP3 to your audio devices, whatever you need. But wherever you're listening, if you could add a review, huge help. I won't tell you what to put. I do shoot for 5 stars with these things, but please, if you can, that's a huge help to me. All the important links, like the links to the documents, the security classification guide, range Fowler reports, all that I will put in the description below on YouTube and the show notes on the podcast version. That said, thank you all for listening and watching. This is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time. All right, don't go. Told you I'd be back. You guys didn't like my bars and tone, so hold on a sec. This gives me somewhat of a visual point that I can go to. All right, back to the non-scripted stuff. Here's the behind the scenes. For those of you joining me in the middle of that, so you're in a behind the scenes show, essentially what that is, again, is you see me record. Thankfully, I can hear my dog back there. I have no idea if you guys can. My little 3-year-old started screaming about something, probably because of her 8-year-old brother. Never know what's going to happen on the behind the scenes. So let me back up here. First, let me say thank you to some super chats that came in here. First and foremost, a huge supporter of this channel, someone who I was bantering back and forth with on Twitter, Jazz Shaw. Drinking a shot of fine Kentucky whiskey in honor of John and reporting on actual UAP news and not social media drama. I appreciate that, Jazz. Thank you for that. And obviously your support. We were joking around about taking shots together and buying each other rounds and stuff like that. So Jazz, it's good to see you. And of course, your support of this channel is awesome. So thank you for that. Jazz is also a personal friend, somebody I trust. If you don't follow Jazz on Twitter, do so. He's definitely one that strikes me as somebody who cares about this topic, wants to report on it as honestly as he can, and ask the questions that sometimes are tough to ask. And that's why I like Jazz. So follow him. Jazz, correct me in the chat, but I believe your handle is straight up Jazz Shaw, all one word. I don't think there's an underscore in there. Forgive me, Jazz, if I got it wrong. just posted it in the chat. I'll make sure everybody's got it. Magician Joshua Logan, what is your educated guess on who Gary Nolan refers to as about to disclose their involvement with government research into anomalous materials? I'll be honest with you, I don't know who Dr. Nolan would be referring to. I can only guess, and I always hate doing that. So I don't know, and I'm probably not even going to try and guess. So we'll see. What I will say on the broader sense is, I'm sure I'm not alone. I may be in a minority. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of tired of the rumors. Like, big things are coming, big things are coming, big things are coming, and that's great. Even saw another, journalist / blogger. Apparently blogger is offensive to some people, so I don't mean it. So journalist, blogger, whatever, is talking about how he has sources that are coming out that whistleblowers are on their way talking about crash retrieval programs and bodies. And so I tweeted at them like, okay, so who are you told by? As of me recording this, and I am live, so there may be an answer. I'm not sure. Still no response. So those rumors are very hard. We'll see if they come to fruition. If the world changes tomorrow because they say they captured alien spacecraft and we have a body, then great. Like, there's no reputable skeptic who's skeptical, who's even labeled as a debunker. If they have a half a brain cell upstairs, if that is irrefutable and it comes out, I can't imagine many of them would refute it if it's irrefutable. So if it is an anonymous source and we see absolutely nothing, sorry, kids, that's just not going to fly. It just isn't. It may very well be true, but it's not going to fly with the debunkers. It's not going to fly with people like me who are skeptical, who don't label themselves as a debunker. But rather, I know there's more to this story, but we have to fight for the evidence. We can't just say, more stuff's coming, guys. More stuff. Nobody panic. It's on the way. Or someone told me, but I can't tell you who, we have bodies. I'm sorry. You can't do that. And that's what's very frustrating. So now specifically back to Dr. Nolan, I don't know. I have extended a invitation to him to appear on the program. Very friendly chat. So hopefully we'll work on that, and that'll come to fruition. Black Dread Scotland. Hey, John, do you have any documents on the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office? Does it even exist? So I know, was it Bobby Inman had talked about it openly. So I believe that there is confirmation that it does exist in that regard. When it comes to official documents, no. But have I filed? Yes, using Inman's statements and references to it. So I think it's one of those like acknowledged secrets at this point. But what exactly they do, I'm not really sure. It doesn't surprise me, though, that they're monitoring underwater regions just like they would space. I mean, you look at the technology that's there, it's like kind of a given. So I think it was one of those things that sounds cooler than it probably is. The NRO was in existence, the NRO, not the NURO, but the NRO was in existence for decades before it was officially acknowledged. And it was operating in a realm that made sense, with spy satellites going up and the Soviets, later Russians, were surveilling us and so on and so forth. So all of that made sense. And then it finally came out to light. So if it comes out tomorrow that the NURO has been in existence since, 1970 and we never knew, wouldn't surprise me at all, but it makes sense and make me feel better about certain things. So let me... There's a lot of chats here. I'm getting to the super chats just because I want to make sure I have time for it. I'm not sure how long I'm going to be able to stay here. That video took a little bit longer than I expected, so bear with me here. I hope I don't miss anybody. From Joe B. Joe, thanks for your support of this channel. Don't you think it seems like all the people deep in these organizations over the decade that know the full truth all agree it shouldn't be public? I don't know. I'm reading it a second time, make sure I don't give you a wrong answer and I misread it. Don't you think it seems like all the people deep in these organizations over the decades that know the full truth all agree it shouldn't be public? I mean, yes and no. We have to operate off of a couple assumptions there, but then what does that say to the people that have come out and won't tell us everything, but know enough to say, hey, we need to know more? And so I would arguably say, no, it doesn't seem that way. I'd love for names to be mentioned. I will say that, I mean, if there truly is either some shenanigans going on or illegal shenanigans going on, a suppression of truth that doesn't meet the criteria for classification, national security, or, I personally identifying information, which are redactions that I agree with. If it doesn't meet those requirements, why? Hey, if these leaders are creating an issue, whether they're appointed or elected or both, then we should start coming out and naming those names. I mean, we can't just keep alluding to the shadow government and say, I was on the inside, I know, but I can't tell you. I don't think that's going to fly anymore. And hey, if Congress gets it out, perfect, but we have to ask the right questions. So I'm a little skeptical about that. I don't think everybody is so anti-truth. I do think that there's an element here where there's a question mark, that they don't know really what's going on. And I get a lot of flack for that stance, but I truly believe that's a possibility, that they don't know 100% of everything. We want to believe that they are just all-knowing and all-powerful, but there's no evidence to that. It's the U.S. government, for crying out loud. There's a lot of failures along the way. I love them dearly, and I'm a patriot and love the country that I live in. But the government has its faults, and history has proven that. So for us to just assume when it comes to aliens that they know everything and that they are the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-suppressing dark lord of this conspiracy, and they are the ones withholding it in the shadows. And then periodically somebody gets out and then they say, oh, I know enough to tell you there's more to the story, but I can't tell you who is hiding it. I can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you a specific example, but there's more. Again, it's a very hard part of the conversation that in the last 5 years has gotten much more frustrating for me. And now I'm only obviously speaking for myself on that, but it's just frustrating. Going through here, forgive me. There are a ton of messages, and I know I'm missing something, so forgive me. Bruce Wayne, Batman himself, is in the house. I don't have any questions for the live chat tonight. Just give us all the answers. LOL. Love this show. Bruce, as you know, who's a great supporter of this channel, also a great person, really seems like he cares about this. I've seen that just from his interaction on this channel and privately as well. Bruce, I appreciate that. If I have the answers, I give them when I can. And if I don't have them, I'm not afraid to tell you. I just have no flipping clue. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the support. Morgan, thank you so much for that. I'm not sure what SEK, where that would be from. I'll feel stupid once I look it up. But thank you for your kind support of the channel. Thanks for all the work you put into this. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Morgan from Sweden. Okay, well, I should have read it before I was an idiot and said I had no idea where you'd be coming from. From Sweden. Morgan, thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for your support of the channel. Very, very cool. A name I didn't expect to pop up. Artisan Tony. Tony, it's great to see you here, buddy. I am curious about Dr. Nolan's supposed Nobel nomination when the nominees are supposed to be unknown for years after. Is this a rumor to give him additional credence? That's an excellent question, Tony. And I really don't know the answer to that. And out of respect, wouldn't want to speculate because I don't know. So number one, thank you for the support. And it's good to see you here. But number two, again, just out of respect for Dr. Nolan, I don't know the answer to that. So great question, though. So yeah. Long-winded way of saying I have no idea, Tony. But it's good to see you. I want to stress that part. Christopher Bales, another great guy. Cool to see you here, Christopher. TBV servers aren't free. Cheers. No, they are not. Thank you, Christopher. As Christopher pointed out, something I haven't pointed out at least this podcast, but I've talked about it before. The cost to keep the Black Vault online is arguably the biggest cost. I have multiple dedicated servers. There's over 3.1 million pages. I'll be updating the tally number soon. But the amount of data transfer that comes from that and the amount of CPU power to power the databases is pretty big. I cannot get hosted by any of those lesser expensive hosting providers. In fact, one of my favorite stories was about 20, God, what is it? It was back in 1999, 2000, about 22 years ago. Long story short, the unlimited bandwidth and unlimited storage got a multi-million-dollar company to have to revamp their definition of what unlimited means because I had taken down their multi-million-dollar network not once but twice in one night after I went on a NBC special. I talked to the main tech on duty that night, which then ended up going to the president of the company. They're now defunct, but they were a company called SimpleNet. And they said that they had never seen traffic like that, and that was 20 years ago. So the amount of data that transfers is it gets my geekness at an all-time high. But as Chris pointed out, not cheap either. So Chris, I appreciate that, and that was my fun way to explain. That is also what your support goes to. 100% of what comes in on Super Chats, Patreon, all of the above, 100% goes right back into the site. I make up the rest. I don't buy myself dinner. I don't buy my son a toy as much as I'm sure he would love me to. So that's what that goes for. And I think I'm caught up. So let me grab some of these other ones. And if I miss something, please let me apologize. There are over 300 people here that I'm seeing on my tally. Chat room's been going pretty good, so it's kind of hard to see everything. So I apologize if I did oversee it. I'll grab some other ones as I kind of scroll up. Lou E. hinting he'll run for office. He did that on my interview. I don't want to say that it was the first time, but I will say it was one of the first times, if not the first. That was early in 2021, January, I believe it was. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. He would probably have a rough time, just simply because there's a lot of baggage that comes with politics, even away from his controversy of what the DOD has said. So that's not me with a vendetta. I'm just saying that an opponent would love to discuss some of these things. So I wish him all the best, though, if he decides to run for office. I haven't heard a recent hint, but if he is, Godspeed. I have no problems with it. I will just be watching with much interest because I think that certain things would likely be asked upon him, and I'd be curious to see on a either state level stage or national, depending upon what he wants to do, how he would answer that. Jared Humphreys, thanks for that support, Jared. I'm curious about your thoughts on Bob Lazar. I believe, and I've talked about this a little bit on this channel, and I've contemplated even a deep dive into this, and those get a little bit, number one, long and brutal, and I know some of them are. But the Bob Lazar story, I think, deserves it, just simply because there's a lot of facets to the story. If I were to nutshell it, I believe it is not real. I believe Bob likely worked for worked for the government in some capacity with a clearance. I mean, I think that's kind of proven. I believe Stan Friedman proved that. But I think, and again, I'm nutshelling it here, but I think when you look at his story, I would even safely say that Bob probably believes Bob. But I don't believe that it actually happened the way that it was. There's too much. And when you look at the people that have come out over the decades with secrets and stuff like that, they don't just go on TV shows and so on, even in silhouette or without, and just start telling the story, you know. I know that Jeremy Corbell doesn't like the education aspect, but for him to kind of set up decades ago his education and degrees and this and that, and kudos to the late but great Stanton Friedman, who, you know, well before really kind of the internet being the go-to resource, dug in physically in paper and phone calls and stuff like that and started finding holes in the story of Bob Lazar. And I think that you need to look at that. I mean, I know people say, well, maybe he didn't have the degrees, but he just wanted to lie. Who hasn't lied on an interview? Well, we're talking about highly classified work and somebody that, you know, allegedly was working on alien spacecraft and the government trusted him. So I'm sorry, you're not going to just waltz into the interview and, lie about all that stuff, not get caught, and then go, hey, this is the guy that we want to trust with all the alien secrets, so let's get him in there. No, and then I think that the rebuttals to that, where they just set him up and he was the fall guy, that if he ever came clean, that they could just, discredit him very easy. I don't see it. I just don't. I'm always open to new information. I watched Jeremy Corbell's film on it. I believe that there was some stuff missing, and I also believe that I brought that up when I interviewed Jeremy a couple years ago on the show before it was even a video show. But I'll have to look back. But would love to welcome Jeremy back and explore some of those questions. But bottom line for me, I don't see it as being a story that is rooted in truth. But I think that if you say something long enough, you do start to believe certain aspects of it. And this isn't a personal slight against Bob, but it is quite possible that he believes what he says at this point, but it really didn't happen. So that's kind of where I'm with on Bob Lazar. And here's one last closing thought on that, and I'll get to some more questions. But there was a video that popped up of George Knapp, who had obviously been entrenched in this story for quite some time, but he was telling the audience that he knew where Bob had hid a chunk or a piece or a vial or whatever element 115 would be, and knew where he put it. And he says, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but essentially, one day when Bob's gone, maybe I'll go out there and dig it up, If, in my opinion, friend or not, told to him in trust or not, the digging up of that piece of evidence would have not only cleared Bob's name, not only vindicated George Knapp's long history of reporting on this, but changed the world. And the problem that I have, that I think a lot of people don't ask when it comes to stories like this and beyond, is those people who are holding those secrets that would change the planet, why don't they do it? I've struggled with that for years, of whistleblowers and the Bob Lazars out there that have the information within their brain, and it sounds like within their grasp. So you don't even have to listen to Bob anymore. Go out there and dig it up. Change the planet. Who's gonna come after you, Bob? No one's gonna come after you if you change the world. The government will not come arrest you and go, wow, you finally proved your story. We're gonna throw you in the clink. You're done. No, I will lead the charge to save Bob Lazar from going to jail, because there's no reason for him to do that. So for me, it is, again, these, in my opinion, silly but logical ways to look at it, that if you can change the planet, then just do it. Don't sell documentaries. Don't sell books. Don't do any of that. If you can truly change the world, there is no reason not to. Andrew Meyer. Andrew, thank you for the support. John, love what you do. You posted a clip of Gillibrand speak to a constituent seemingly interested in more disclosure. Curious what Congress could reveal once they learn it from a closed session. Yeah, that was a great clip. I wanted to bring it here on YouTube. The music in the background was creating a copyright issue, and I have been very, very careful with those issues. And as sadly, I don't know if he's still in the room, but Luis Jimenez learned, just using a thumbnail version got a copyright complaint against him and a strike. So I have always been very, very careful with that on this channel. But I did tweet it out from the person who had posted it, and Gillibrand was actually very gracious with her time and answer about the UAP question. So now, past that setup, curious what Congress could reveal once they learn it from a closed session. Anything that is meant to be in a closed session, the answer would be nothing. They couldn't reveal it unless it goes through a declassification process, or they violate their security oaths, which I don't see them doing. They can absolutely tell their constituents and the world one thing. We want transparency. We want this. We want that. And that all sounds great. And look, I'm all for it. But if politicians have taught me one thing in the however many years I've been voting and paying attention, It's that what they tell you and I is not always what they actually do. And so for them to say that, it sounds great, but I want to see it. And the fact that they were just more than willing to hear during that hearing, well, we'll tell you more, Senator, Congressman, whomever, more in a closed session. And they just kind of go, oh, okay, great, thanks. That to me is not a huge vote of confidence that they're going to come out of these closed sessions and go, okay, let me reveal what we have learned. Instead, they're going to be very vague and not reveal anything, which is the unfortunate truth. So hopefully I answered your question there, Andrew. Thank you for that. A couple more here, then I'm going to have to go. Tim Staley, thank you so much, Tim. Hey, John, can you, I knew this would come up. Can you please address why Lou Elizondo would characterize you as a huckster, fraudster, or felon? Are these comments personal opinion, or is there backing documentation to corroborate? Great question, Tim, and I'm happy to answer that for you. To be fair to Mr. Elizondo, fraudster was not in the message attributed to me, as far as I know. Huckster, would consider that the same darn thing, but I want to be as fair as possible. Felon, he misspelled, meaning Mr. Elizondo misspelled F-E-L-L-O-N. I believe, though, that was just his misspelling. He did mean criminals, 5 of them. Then he mentioned 5 names. For those who don't know, I haven't talked about this on the channel a lot, but it came up today on social media that there was some talk about me, again, along with a couple of other people, that Mr. Elizondo was very frustrated about. It was a private message sent to, since it's public, I'll say it, Luis Jimenez. And also, since this part is public, I don't mind saying it, that I got a phone call on a Sunday from Luis Jimenez and asked me about the felon part. And I don't blame him, because I am a regular, or was a regular, on UCR. I say was because it sounds like he may be putting his show on hold. Very sad to hear that, Luis, if you're listening. The short of it, and what I'm comfortable saying, because again, a lot of this was behind the scenes, it was a voicemail that was left for me. And it did not sound like Luis Jimenez's normal voice. I learned later that he was forced to make that phone call. I believe that also came out in his podcast. And Luis Elizondo, I guess, was on the line, that he made him call, from what I understand. I called Luis Jimenez back. We talked about this because he was trying to say that he misunderstood the felon thing, because he originally had asked me and I said no. And forgive me, I kind of skipped this part of the story, but when he asked me privately, because I was a regular, I said, dude, I'll wire you the money right now while I'm on the phone with you. Pick any background check you want, run a criminal background check. I have no record, and that's provable. I don't even have a speeding ticket. So the felon thing was silly, but I said, hey, I'll pay for it because you're a friend and I don't want this over my head. And you concerned about that. So he, and again, that part is private conversation. He didn't feel the need to do that. But again, all of that is provable. So then the voicemail was left I forget how long it was after that. And that's when I learned that, things were misconstrued, but then later learned he was forced to make that phone call. And, I read it just like Luis Jimenez did. So now that I've set that up, why would he characterize me as a huckster? What he also did say was mentally unstable. I think it's irrefutable that he was referring to me and a couple others, but he spelled out my name. People on Twitter said, how do you know he's talking about you? Because he typed out Greenwald. There's no, way around that. But he, in my opinion, called me mentally unstable and a huckster, and arguably a felon. And again, no criminal history. I said in my tweet today, arguably, because his explanation was the use of a comma, and the comma there kind of said that it wasn't me. But look, it's silly. It really is. It's childish. Why would he characterize me as that? He's upset. Why? I don't know. Let him be upset. It doesn't even matter, at this point, why. I mean, he did it. And those direct messages, those private messages, I can comfortably say were because Luis Elizondo sent them out. He sent them out to people to post online. This is incredibly childish. I get a lot of heat for the exposés, the deep dives, the digging into his story. I stand by that response video where we shouldn't be afraid to question taxpayer-funded programs run by taxpayer-paid employees or military personnel, whatever. We shouldn't be afraid to do that. And instead, I get him talking around my back, calling me mentally unstable to a friend who got concerned, especially about the criminal talk, that if he's getting a felon on his channel, that he's concerned. And I wasn't bothered by that phone call at all. I didn't mind addressing it. And at the end of the day, laughed off the felon thing. But then when I saw the full message, which Luis Jimenez, to his credit, didn't even tell me about the other stuff. He was just concerned about that criminal accusation and making sure that I wasn't a criminal that he was inviting on his show all the time. So I supported that. When I saw, and I laughed off the felon thing, but then when I saw the whole thing, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Like, this is getting to a very childish level. So anybody who thinks that I've gone too far should look at this and go, maybe this is all going too far when you start saying stuff like that. But then when he told me he was the one that sent the messages out, that was in writing. That's irrefutable. Mr. Elizondo said he sent it out. He was the one that did that to his self-described friends. And then they started the avalanche of controversy by posting those private messages. It's just silly. It really is. Going back to your question, are these comments personal opinion or is there backing documentation to corroborate? No, there's not, because I have no criminal record. Anybody can prove that. I can't lie to you guys because it's public record. So that's ridiculous. Him characterizing me as a huckster, that's his opinion. Fine. But why? Now he's got an attorney tweeting warnings to me about defamation. For those who aren't aware, I asked both the attorney and Mr. Elizondo, what justifies your warning to me? And neither one of them answered. So who knows? I'm sorry to get into that drama stuff, but Tim, I wanted to answer your question and not dodge it because they are important questions. So, hey, it is what it is. There's a lot more to that story. And as people probably picked up on Twitter, I'm not going to share personal messages myself to clear my name. Mr. Elizondo knows what he said privately to me and what I posted publicly. I invite you all to look at my Twitter wall. That's the only place that I posted it. Everything that I said there is backed up by things in writing. And I have it all as proof. So in case he would like me to justify that, I'm happy to do it. RBO7, could you give us an example of some of the nonsense they redact, like a pre and post redaction example? Great question. So you'll see what I post about on social media a lot through what I call an MDR success, or mandatory declassification review success story. And I'll oftentimes juxtapose the document that I tried to get further declassified and then what was released and showing those redactions. Off the top of my head, one of the most recent ones was the HODL memo. There's a video on this channel that will show you that process. So it was identifying information of the agent and the source of information that actually tied into crashed flying saucers and alien bodies. Speaking of that again. The HODL memo has been around for decades. The redactions were never lifted. I filed a request early, I think it was this year, and got them released or lifted. So I would invite you to check out that video because I kind of do a full rundown of the document, what it says, and then I show you the redactions. So what was redacted for decades and then what was not. That's just one example. I mean, I've got, quite a few other ones that I post quite regularly where it was redacted for years, in some cases decades, but lifted. A lot of times it's classified information that was classified in 1980, stuff they learned through surveillance satellites that maybe were classified at the time, or, again, stuff along those lines. But then fast forward to 2022, all that stuff, maybe like the satellite that collected the data, is no longer classified, so they release it. And so that lifts the redactions. So there's a wide range of reasons why redactions are there and why they may be lifted after, but that'll give you a couple examples. Jazz Shaw, you're the best. Great show, John. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that support, guys. Rafi Tulukter. I hope I have that pronounced correctly. Rafi, thank you so much. Glad there are people like you in the UAP field. I support you 100% and appreciate all that you do. Thank you, Rafi. Really do appreciate that. I know sometimes this gets a little dry and sometimes brutal, but I really appreciate that. Give me one more couple minutes here. Wacky Warrior 001 with a super sticker. Thank you so much for that. I want to get to all these. I know my kids are going to burst through the door pretty soon. My wife's out there trying to keep them quiet. I keep hearing shh a couple times. Kooky Nick. Amen, John. Show me the metal. That's what I say. Come on. If you can change the world, change it. Bear with me here. Still scrolling. Wow, you guys are doing great with the chats. So cool to see you guys communicate with each other. That's why I also love doing these, opening up the chats and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, it just refreshed and there's all these other ones. Bruce Wayne, isn't Lou paid to lie for the government? Counterintelligence, my friend. Whether we call that lie or not, I'll let you guys decide, but counterintelligence. All right, I think I'm caught up. I know this wasn't directed to me, but this is a very cool comment. I appreciate that. I legitimately think John can make a living teaching a masterclass on the ins and outs of proper FOIA requests. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate the kind words. I would never want to be paid for that, just only because I'm an advocate for freedom of information. So I always love giving little extra tidbits about FOIA here on this channel and elsewhere, even through private messages and communications and stuff like that. But I appreciate the thought. So thank you so much. I wanted to make sure I told you thank you. Some of these are funny comments I won't read. Dude Guy, thank you, Dude Guy, for that support. If the government does indeed come out with evidence and testimony that this is an extraterrestrial phenomenon, do you think the public will then lose any remaining trust in government? If I'm following you correctly, so then they finally come clean. We realize they've lied to us for 70 plus years. And so then we just can't trust them on anything. I hope I have that right, Dude Guy. I would say no. I think, and this is a big, obviously hypothetical if they'll do this. I don't think they will, but let's just, again, hypothetical reasons if they did come out and say that. I think there's going to be a portion of people going, okay, they're finally being honest with us. Let's kind of, restart this trust in government and see where they go next. I'll be honest with you, there'll be a lot of people that if that happened and they came out with extraterrestrial knowledge, they would distrust that from the government if they didn't give proper proof. And then they would not trust the government based on the fact that they're talking about aliens and aliens aren't real. So we can't trust the government. So I think you're going to have a wide range of reactions. I don't think that, I don't think it would just be an automatic, well, we can't trust the government anymore. I think we're comfortable as an American society, and I know I've got a lot of international friends here, but in America, I think we're comfortable to know that the government isn't always honest with us. Politicians aren't always honest with us. So, but we've come comfortable with that, as weird as that sounds and as silly as it is, that we've become comfortable with that reality. So I think that if they come out and tell us this big lie that they've had for 70 years, I mean, we've kind of set them up as that big kind of lying entity anyway in our minds, so it won't be that big of a surprise, even though it'll change the world. So anyway, so hopefully that answered your question there. Listen, I have thoroughly enjoyed spending a little bit of my Friday night with you guys. I have an awesome family, though, on the other side of this I want to go spend some time with. And also I'm starving. And Jazz, if you are still here, my friend, I am going to do that other half of the agreement on the shot. So maybe I'll text you a picture of it. But that said, a lot of stuff waiting for me on the other side of the door. Closing thought, though, real quick. Thank you, guys. I really honestly appreciate the support. I know some of this is often referred to as drama. Obviously, there was a question about that, and I don't like to bog down too much of this channel with it, but those are important questions. There's a lot of aspects to this conversation that some do label as drama. and rightfully so. But there are some aspects that really, I hope, get handled soon, because there's a lot of layers to this onion. And that segment that you saw me record tonight really highlights, I think, the secrecy behind this, the exploitation, as they called it, the analysis. What do they have? And with that, I keep going back to the counterintelligence value to all of this. The counterintelligence value to the UAP conversation is astronomical, pardon the pun. They can achieve so much by muddying the waters, from concealing the true part of these phenomena that I think warrant scientific investigation. Yes, I do believe that there's an aspect of it. They can hide and shield that top secret technology and capability that, yes, is part of this conversation, which includes the evil drones that no one wants to talk about. That's part of this conversation. It also allows them to shield the ignorance on what's going on. And yeah, I believe that there's part of that in this conversation, that something is there, alien or not, that they have no idea what it is. And so that counterintelligence play that comes in is muddy the water so much. We have no idea what we know and don't know. And that is the true root definition of what counterintelligence is. So people that are trained in counterintelligence, that come out and join the UAP conversation and tell us, well, I know more than you do, but I can't tell you. They shouldn't be surprised why we're questioning that. That we're not all on the bandwagon going, thank you for being here and enlightening all of us to your wisdom. No offense to anybody that works in counterintelligence. I've got some buddies that do, still do, that are in the Pentagon. But sorry, they need to mess it up. That's what CI is all about. That's what the whole truth is about to counterintelligence. And if you look at the overall picture, the messing up, the muddying of the waters has achieved something that may or may not have been intended. I'm not really sure. But those that look at the evidence, there are factions of belief systems here. There are anywhere from this is aliens to this is only top secret tech, and there's everything in between. So whether or not that was a desired result or not, I have no idea. But mission accomplished anyway, because that counterintelligence value was there to mess all this up. Mission accomplished, because we have no idea what's there. So that's what the aim for me is moving forward, is to see how much evidence I can get battling that security classification guide and peeling away the layers of the onion, because I guarantee we don't know all the layers, but I also guarantee we don't know the majority of the layers of this onion. So many people think we're there and we've peeled back so much and we've come so far in its disclosure. I don't see it. And that's not being a skeptic. It's not being a debunker. It's dealing in reality and evidence, like that security classification guide. So keep asking questions and don't be afraid to ask them. Don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid if it's a stupid question. I don't care if you direct it to the Pentagon, to me, or to some anonymous account making silly claims. Don't be afraid. Because part of that counterintelligence mission, if there is one, and again, if there is one, is to make it that you are afraid to ask the questions, that they will bring out legal threats against you, or intimidation, or bullying, or sock puppet accounts, or anonymous identities used to just suppress what you're saying or what you're asking. If there's a massive cover-up like I think there is, don't let them do it. I don't know if it's an official psyop. I've never been into that conspiracy myself. I've even spoken out against it. Those who have listened to me for the last few years, that's provable. There's time-stamped proof of that. But even if there is, don't let them win. Don't let them suppress your voice. Ask those questions. Don't be afraid, because right here on this channel, I'll continue to do it. That said, I'm going to go enjoy my Friday night. I love all you guys. Thank you so much for your support. I mean it about asking the questions even directed at me. Place them in the comments below here on YouTube. I always appreciate looking and reading through. Even if you disagree with me, not a problem. I don't mind respectful discussion. So make sure you do that. And again, thumbs up really does help me on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. And as you know, it's John Greenwald Jr. signing off. We'll see you next time.